Because I can literally pull over right now, and you'll be taking an Uber for the rest of the ride home.
Bilal and Shaeeda are 90 Day Fiance newcomers, but Bilal has shown so many red flags already that it's insane. Between his controlling nature and outrageous reactions, the crazy truth about Bilal is being exposed in an unbelievable way. Bilal Aziz made his first impression on 90 Day viewers earlier this year, and it wasn't exactly a good one. When he picked up his fiancée, Shaeeda Sween, from the airport, he pulled a seriously crazy prank on her. I don't think anybody expected Bilal's prank to be so strange. What he did to Shaeeda was bizarre, and why he did it was honestly startling. Bilal revealed that in the 2 years he and Shaeeda had been video chatting, he had never shown the inside of his house. Instead, he would only let her see the plain wall behind him. Apparently, he wanted to make sure that she wasn't just after him for his money. So rather than trust the woman he was about to live with and marry, Bilal decided to test Shaeeda in a ridiculously way. Instead of picking Shaeeda up in his Mercedes, Bilal drove an old work van to the airport. Then he drove her to his childhood home, which he hadn't lived in 15 years. I get that Bilal wanted to feel like Shaeeda would love him no matter what, but this wasn't the way to go about it. When Shaeeda expressed that she wasn't totally happy about the house's crumbling foundation and cracked ceilings, Bilal's reaction was extremely unsettling. Shaeeda even pointed out that some things in the house needed to be fixed, but Bilal immediately turned it around on how her attitude needed to be fixed. I was shocked by how Bilal was overlooking the real reason why Shaeeda was struggling with his prank. She had a serious reason for being concerned, and the way he handled it was absolutely insane. Shaeeda was worried that Bilal, a real estate agent, wasn't going to be able to provide for her while she was waiting for her work permit. I could understand why she was put off, and she even called it Bilal's twisted practical joke. But what made his weird prank even worse was the fact that Bilal and Shaeeda were already way more committed than people might have originally thought. The couple was already spiritually married when Shaeeda arrived in the US. They had an Islamic marriage ceremony after Bilal proposed during their first week together. So if Bilal had already committed to Shaeeda, why was he testing her character and intentions on the first day that they were about to start their new life together? It turns out that was just the first of Bilal's many bright red flags. Even though Bilal had just criticized Shaeeda for how she reacted to his childhood home, he did something super unexpected at his real house. He'd set up a yoga room for her and had bags of presents ready for her in their bedroom. I don't know about you, but I feel like if I had been in Shaeeda's shoes, I wouldn't know how to react, and I would probably be even more confused by what he did next. Bilal had literally spent the last 24 hours testing her to find out if Shaeeda was after his money, just to lay out tons of gifts for her. Then he started lecturing her on how to be appreciative. I couldn't believe that Bilal had turned his terrible test of Shaeeda's motives into a strange life lesson about being grateful. His shirt even said "Be grateful" on the front. To make matters worse, Bilal acted far from grateful himself an insane amount of times. Right after Shaeeda moved in, Bilal's neat freak and controlling side came out. Not only did he complain about Shaeeda's hijab pins in his expensive couch, but he also got upset at her for not cleaning up a little bit of water on the floor. But I was honestly stunned by how Bilal criticized Shaeeda next. This showed just how extreme his expectations of her were. Bilal went off on Shaeeda about how the silverware still looked dirty after she had washed the dishes. He'd also been so judgmental about how Shaeeda thought his childhood home was falling apart, but he wasn't able to deal with anything being out of place or slightly dirty. It was wild to me when Shaeeda asked Bilal where it was okay to drink coffee when this was supposed to be her home too. But unfortunately, his actions took an unbelievable turn for the worse. Bilal was so critical of how Shaeeda had reacted to his rundown childhood home prank, but in reality, he couldn't take what he dished out. His hypocrisy was on full display while the couple headed to the mosque for Jama, their Friday prayer service. Shaeeda was incredibly nervous about meeting not only Bilal's community, but his ex-wife, Shaeeda, for the first time. But instead of reassuring her, Bilal turned the situation into an absolute nightmare. On the car ride to the mosque, Bilal decided to joke around at Shaeeda's expense instead of confronting her. I think she was embarrassed and annoyed when he joked about her having something in her nose, and I don't think she needed to deal with that on top of her nerves. But when Shaeeda lightly tapped Bilal on the side of the head for continuing to tease her, he reacted in such a disturbing way. Bilal was so offended by Shaeeda's playful smack and demanded that she keep her hands to herself. She put her hands in his face a few times more, which honestly wasn't the best idea since he was driving, but still. The reaction that Bilal had was extreme, and was that of an angry father more than than anything. I was honestly shocked that he told her how disrespectful she was and to watch her tone, but what happened next was somehow even more unbelievable. Bilal asked Shaeeda if she was a violent person, even though she had meant the tap on his head as a joke. Then Shaeeda jokingly smacked Bilal again, and he took the ordeal up a notch by pulling over on the side of the busy highway. I seriously couldn't believe it when Bilal threatened to leave her on the side of the road until she could get an Uber back to the house. Even though he didn't do that, what Shaeeda had to deal with next was just as ridiculous. Bilal and Shaeeda arrived at the mosque, but he refused to interact with her there. She was left to fend for herself in a crowd of people she didn't know while Bilal chatted up his friends and totally ignored her. It was obvious that he still wasn't over it later that night when he made a very manipulative decision. Shaeeda had gotten dressed up and ready for her and Bilal's scheduled date night, and he revealed that he wasn't in the mood to go out anymore. It's crazy to me that he threatened to leave her on the highway, then left her completely alone at the worship service. But he still hadn't worked through the issue. Clearly, Bilal and Shaeeda weren't on the same page when it came to joking around, but the way he acted was so hypocritical. He wanted her to get over his prank right away, but he was ready to cancel their date night last minute because of what Shaeeda had done. And since Bilal can't simply explain why a situation frustrates him without shaming Shaeeda and making her feel less than him, she had to sit and listen to another of his lectures. But Bilal's gaslighting reached a crazy new level with what happened next. Shaeeda claimed that she felt like she was being punished for what had happened earlier, and Bilal's response was seriously insane. According to him, he wasn't pushing her by canceling their date night, he just didn't feel like going because of how the day had gone. I can't imagine how frustrating that had to have been for Shaeeda, but honestly, Bilal never seems to acknowledge that her feelings matter. The way he threatened her around his family was so alarming. When Shaeeda met Bilal's mom and siblings for the first time, it didn't go as smoothly as she had probably hoped. I really don't think anybody would have expected Bilal to handle the family dinner the way he did. Shaeeda was obviously so nervous about meeting everyone, and Bilal betrayed what trust she had left in him in a seriously bizarre way. Bilal openly criticized Shaeeda and talked about her like she wasn't there during the family dinner. He immediately called her out for not liking the family's former home, and it made it seem like she had only been ungrateful and nothing else. But as awkward as that was, nothing compared to how disrespectful Bilal was when a very touchy subject came up. This was seriously crazy. Shaeeda, who is 37, brought up wanting to have a baby, and Bilal spoke about the issue to the rest of his family in a very surprising way. He claimed that Shaeeda was living in a fantasy land when it came to how life changes with a baby. You could see the shame and frustration on her face, which is heartbreaking and infuriating at all the same time. At the dinner and many times afterward, Bilal treated Shaeeda badly and she still had to depend on him. Although she seemed unhappy at times, Bilal kept trying to convince her that she was just seeing the situation wrong. But Shaeeda wanting a baby with Bilal has been a constant topic ever since their 90-day debut, and the way he's handled it is absolutely shocking. Bilal, who already has a 6-year-old daughter and a 13-year-old son, did not see eye to eye with Shaeeda when it came to having a baby. Even now, Bilal keeps dodging the topic. But even though he refused to give Shaeeda a direct answer about their future family, he wanted a clear answer about his concerns. His true colors were revealed even more by what he did during a date night. During a date night with Shaeeda, Bilal planned to show her more of his romantic side. I was honestly hoping to see a redeeming quality from Bilal, but that did not happen. When they were in the middle of the water on a boat ride, she opened up to him about how she was positive that he was the person for her. Whether or not Bilal felt the same way, he could have handled the situation way better than he did. I would have been crushed if I had been in her place. Bilal responded to Shaeeda by telling her that maybe the person he was meant to be with doesn't exist. The fact that Bilal can say such harsh things to Shaeeda is insane, and part of the reason why a lot of people believe that he's a narcissist. But even if it was somehow just a case of bad timing and not knowing what to say, Bilal repeated his mistake in a seriously unexpected way. He took Shaeeda out for another date not too long after, but then he proved again that he doesn't ever consider her feelings. His lack of total empathy is another narcissistic trait that viewers have pointed out, and it was obvious on their date. While Bilal and Shaeeda were on top of a Ferris wheel, he chose the worst timing ever to surprise her with an unbelievable announcement. Shaeeda needed help calming her nerves about the height they were at. When Bilal mentioned that he had a prenuptial agreement written up without her knowledge, I feel like most people would have just reassured their partner that they were okay. But Bilal decided being trapped in the air was the perfect time to talk about a sensitive subject. Shaeeda was so taken aback and hurt court, but somehow the situation got even worse shortly after. Bilal's ex-wife, Shaeeda, came over to Bilal and Shaeeda's house and accused her of being a gold digger. Afterward, Shaeeda kept bringing up how uncomfortable it had made her to Bilal. I think Bilal wanted to avoid confrontation so badly that he didn't even care that Shaeeda had been disrespected. Eventually, the three of them met up again to talk about it. But the way Bilal went about the situation was outstanding. When Bilal, Shaeeda, and Shaeeda met up at a restaurant to talk about what had happened, the conversation spiraled immediately. Bilal's ex-wife got so aggressive and defensive that she basically threatened to take off her earrings to fight Shaeeda. I was blown away by her actions, but Bilal's response to the argument was extremely telling to a lot of viewers. Even though Shaeeda had stayed calm the entire time, Bilal was so upset with her that he wouldn't even talk to her. I couldn't believe it when Shaeeda said that his silent treatment had lasted into the next day. And if that wasn't manipulative enough, when Bilal finally spoke to her, he made her agree to repair the situation for the family's well-being. He put the blame on Shaeeda, but was still demanding that she sign the prenup or he would walk away. After some time and even more manipulation, Shaeeda finally agreed to sign Bilal's prenup as long as she was able to add to it. I was honestly surprised that Bilal had sort of compromised by letting Shaeeda add that they had to have a baby by the time she was 40. Not only that, but it also stated that Bilal would agree to help Shaeeda start up her yoga business. But it turns out, even a signed contract doesn't mean anything to Bilal when it comes to what Shaeeda wants. This is honestly insane. Sadly, a doctor recently told Shaeeda that her chances of getting pregnant are super low. As I'm sure you expected, Bilal didn't seem to care and wouldn't budge on trying for a baby. I can't believe that Shaeeda was hurting so much by the news, but Bilal didn't seem to care about her feelings at all. And when the couple visited New York, the situation took an even more shocking turn. Shaeeda's best friend Utris met up with the couple during a dinner on their trip. Since Shaeeda hadn't gotten any answers from Bilal about having a baby, Utris started asking him some tough questions. I do think that Utris could have been a little less aggressive, but I don't think that would have changed how Bilal handled the conversation. The way he acted was seriously mind-blowing. When Utris was asking Bilal about his and Shaeeda's future, he was so defensive and deflected everything. He somehow turned it all back on Utris and didn't answer a single question she asked. Shaeeda was clearly super uncomfortable with the conversation getting so heated, and she asked them to handle the situation the next day. But Utris ended up finding out some information that was honestly outrageous. When Utris and Bilal met up the following day, he acted so fake and nice at first. I was surprised that they were able to have an actual discussion, but it didn't exactly go well. Shaeeda had been under the impression that Bilal was going to help her rent or buy a yoga studio for her to get her business running, but that wasn't the case. Bilal's only concerns are surprisingly only about himself, so his plans with Shaeeda were disappointing. Utris discovered that Bilal hadn't really planned on getting Shaeeda a yoga studio. Apparently, he'd only meant that he would help her get it going by researching the business startup and paperwork needed. I'm so glad that Utris saw how shady this was, since Bilal basically made it seem like the baby situation wasn't as big of a deal as Shaeeda was making it. I can't believe how much manipulation and control Bilal has shown over Shaeeda. It honestly seems like he's going to string her along for as long as he possibly can, which is just seriously disturbing. But what do you guys think? What are your thoughts on how Bilal has treated Shaeeda? What do you think will happen in their future? Let me know in the comments.